Welcome to Behold. I'm Beth Whitney, and today I have a special guest, Leah Steward. Leah is the College and Young Adults Director here at Arcade Church. And Leah, tell us something fun about yourself.
Something fun. I really enjoy flag football.
That's an understatement.
It's an understatement. I don't know if I love playing flag football more or watching the 49ers play. I also don't know which season I'm more obnoxious in.
I think it's equal obnoxiousness.
Yeah, probably. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But today, Leah and I are going to have a conversation about singleness in the church, what singleness, thriving in singleness looks like, but then how the church can come alongside, support, care for, help single people feel like they belong to the congregation.
Yeah.
Here we go. Hey, Leah.
Hey, Beth.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm ready for this fun conversation.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. We're going to talk about singleness
Yes.
in the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of want to start by saying, just because I'm having a conversation with you, you are not representing every single person.
I'm not all of them.
You are not all of the single people.
Yeah.
You are just you. You're an individual. Your experiences are unique.
Yes.
And so as I'm hoping as you're listening, as we're having this conversation, keep that in mind. You might be a single person and your entire life experience is different than Leah's. Or you can nod your head and relate. But hopefully we'll learn from each other.
Yes.
And as we were preparing for this, I kind of gave you permission to correct me in the moment.
Yes.
So I've been married since I was like 20.1. So like.
You've been married my whole life.
I've been married your whole life.
Yeah.
And so I might say something inadvertently unkind or insensitive. Yeah. And because we're working on having good relationships, not just between the two of us, but singles in the church, you're going to correct me in the moment. And I'll promise not to cry. Deal?
Deal.
Okay. All right. So let's start with this. Let's start with what are the top 5 stupidest things? I never say stupidest.
Stupidest?
It felt like the right word.
It is the right word today.
Stupidest things people have said to you related to being single.
Okay. So I had to think about this.
Yeah.
Because in my defense mechanism, I will hear it and then never remember it again. Because those are typically the moments where I'm like, I want to crawl in a hole and never be seen.
Yes.
So, but there are a couple I remember.
Okay.
Like one is super recent. Number 1 is recent.
Okay.
I went home for Mother's Day and catching up with some friends. And there's this guy, he was a dad of people I grew up with.
Okay.
Catching up, and he's like, oh, so are you married? No. He's like, oh, can't you find anybody to marry? Not even somebody younger than you? Loved
Ouch.
that. Loved that. That stung for a few days. Another one recently, or a couple years ago, someone was like, yeah, the only people who are single in their late 20s are people who are like stunted in maturity. So remember that one a few years later.
Yeah.
And I think those were the ones that I'm like, specific people said. I think typical things, you're so great. You'll marry somebody someday. And I think that's something that probably every single person over the age of 22 has heard multiple times. But nobody likes hearing that because it communicates that there's something wrong with you being single.
Okay.
Number 4, you'll understand once you're married.
Oh.
And I think because I'm a youngest sibling, that feels very like, you'll understand once you're older.
Like they're pat on the head kind of thing.
Which part of it's true.
Sure.
But
also patronizing.
Don't tell me that.
It's patronizing.
Yes. I'm afraid you'll never get married one day. I'm not afraid I'm not going to get married one day. Why are you afraid that I'm going to not get married one day?
Yeah.
And a bonus.
Ooh, bonus.
Because I don't know how to follow
You're an
rules.
overachiever.
Or I don't know how to follow rules.
Okay.
But yeah. Asking if I'm dating about every single time you see me.
So every conversation, there's a, hey, are you dating anyone?
Yes. Let the relationship of us happen. And like that, if that's going to come up, especially I'm the type of person, if I'm dating somebody, you're probably going to know.
Sure.
So if I'm not telling you, that means it's not happening. But those are some of the...
Also, your dating life isn't everyone's business.
Yes.
So just because someone's single,
yes,
that doesn't mean just because you're an acquaintance, you have the right to stick your nose in their business.
You're allowed to ask me about my dating life because we have that relationship.
And I do.
And you do. And I appreciate it.
But not every conversation.
Not every conversation. Yeah. So those are some of the things that are like the stingers.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Next question. What is beautiful about being single?
Yes. I think for me, I love being single.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of beauty in it. And a big one is the capacity that I have. I have capacity for doing a lot of ministry.
Okay.
I recognize that being somebody who is single in ministry, I have a lot more time for students. I have like just some freedom to do things more creatively. And even my students in the Grove, they understand that. A lot of them understand that. And we've had conversations about it. And I love that.
Yeah.
I have capacity for a lot of deep friendships. Most people in their 30s don't have the number of deep, thriving relationships and friendships that I have.
Right.
And I have friendships in Sacramento. I have friendships in Reno and Chico and just people who I have oh yeah, we are doing life together. And part of that's because I have the capacity to dive into their world.
Right.
And so I love that. I also have freedom to like make last minute decisions. Like the other day I went to go play an hour of football and that turned into 4 hours of football. And it was because I had the freedom to do that.
Sure.
I didn't have somebody waiting at home or a babysitter or husband's watching the kids, so I need to go back for nap time or whatnot. And so those are some of the things that I recognize that I have because I'm single.
Sure.
And so.
You know what? I forgot to ask you.
Yes.
Tell us about your home situation.
Yes.
What does your living situation look like?
I also love my home situation.
Yes.
I live with a family, a young married couple. They're older than me, but they've been married a couple years, and they have twin 10-month-olds who I'm obsessed with, and I recognize that I'm the annoying person who wants everyone to see pictures.
Oh, I get them all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Thank you and sorry. But I love them. And so I think even in that, I get family dynamics. And they're not my kids. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night. I also don't hear them in the middle of the night.
Sure.
But I get to live with the little babies.
Yeah.
And they're fun and great and the apple of my eye.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so special.
Yes.
Okay, so thinking about thriving in the church as a single person, what is that person's responsibility as far as their thriving? And then what's the church's responsibility to support your thriving?
I love that because I think sometimes we think it's all the church's responsibility. So if I'm not thriving, it's the church's fault. And so there is responsibility of the person for their own thriving. And I would say, number one, get involved in the church. Go to church, get involved in the small group at Arcade. It's called Gather Groups.
Right.
Serve.
Yep.
Do all of that. If you're not doing that, you're probably not going to thrive. The church is the best place to thrive.
You know what? And that's not just for single people.
No.
There are lots of married people at churches, not just Arcade, but churches who come to the large group gathering and go home and never connect.
Yes.
And my guess is they're probably spiritually not thriving in a way that they could if they did all those things that you're like, this is how a single person can thrive spiritually in the church.
Yeah. When I moved away to college, my pastor, like that was what he told me. He's like, go find a church, find a community of people to do life with, and find a place in that church to serve.
Yep.
That was my instructions. And I think that's how you thrive.
Yep.
I think as a single person, you need to also be able to name what is beautiful about your singleness.
Okay.
And also what's difficult about it. Thriving doesn't mean we're pretending that there's not hard moments, but it's holding both. You have a special place in the church because of your singleness, and there's hard things about your singleness.
Sure.
And both coexist, and naming those, I think, is a step to thriving.
Awesome.
Figure out what thriving looks like for you. Okay. For me, it looks different than other people, especially talking about different situations of singleness and different personalities in their singleness. But so what does it look like for you to thrive? What do you need to aim towards that? Whether it's in the church or outside of the church, what does thriving look like for you? I think something that I've been learning too is knowing the spaces that are harder for me to be in.
Okay.
And knowing what to do, like when to limit those spaces.
Okay.
And when do I engage with them and ask for help in them? And so one of them, like something that's really difficult in my season right now of singleness is I would love to be a mom.
Okay.
And so when I'm in spaces where there's 5, 6, 7, 20 young moms talking about being a mom, that's hard for me.
Okay.
And so I recognize that, one, those spaces are good. Please, young moms, keep meeting with other young moms. I love that. You guys need that.
Right.
Also, sometimes I need to remove myself from that because I just get bitter.
Sure.
Because I begin to other myself. I feel like I don't belong, and it feels like there's salt on a wound in my journey that I'm like, okay. And sometimes I need to choose into that.
Sure.
But I don't have to force myself, and I can recognize those are good situations that I don't have to be in all the time.
That's really wise.
Thanks. I've learned a lot from you and wisdom, so there we are.
That's very kind of you. Okay, so now let's talk about what the church's responsibility is.
Yeah. I think a big one is recognizing we've been taught, and this is church, like both the single people and the married people in the church, we have been taught that marriage is the number one goal.
Oh, for sure.
So we don't know how to interact when people aren't married. Or we accidentally talk about marriage as the goal, or singleness is the waiting period before you get to thrive. And I think the first step in the church, like, recognize how you do that in your own life, and what are the things you need help shifting your mindset.
Okay.
Another thing is bear each other's burdens.
Okay.
I think sometimes being single, I love helping people, and I love being in people's lives. But if we have nobody to do that with, then we're missing part of the, like, what the church was designed to be.
Right.
The church isn't designed to not have families, and like the church is very family centric, and that's like, look throughout Mark, that's all it is.
Yeah.
But bearing each other's burdens, that means, hey, like, I don't have to be a young mom or married to be able to hear how you're having a hard day. You don't have to be single to hear my hard day. There's burdens of like, hey, this is how I'm struggling financially. This is how I'm struggling in this, like, oh, I've been sick a lot, or my health, my fitness, whatever. Like, I don't have to fully understand to be able to bear each other's burdens.
Right.
The other thing is choose into each other's worlds. As a single person, I'm only one person.
That's right. You're not speaking for everyone.
I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm speaking for Leah Stewart.
Yep.
Something that I do a lot, and one of the things I love doing, is I get to choose into my married friends' worlds.
Okay.
I go to their house. I am involved in their kids' lives. Our hangouts are revolved around kids' nap times or snack times and whatnot. And I love that, and I love that I could have that privilege. And sometimes I want people to choose into my world.
Okay.
If you have single friends, they probably have a lot of hobbies. And that's a lot of opportunity to, like, not all the time, but every once in a while, like, hey, you're running a marathon. Can I come to your marathon? Maybe girls' night in is at your single friend's house. Something that was really cool. I had friends, so I play flag football.
Yes.
I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And I had friends a couple weeks ago, like, their whole family came and watched my, like, 45-minute recreational flag football game. And that meant the world to me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this is something I enjoy, and I'm kind of weirdly proud of football. And for 45 minutes, and I know it's a struggle. Like, you have to wrangle your toddler around.
It probably took them 45 minutes to get in the car.
Yes,
to come to your 45 minutes.
And it's way more stressful for you to watch my game than it is for me to choose into your world. But it means so much.
Yeah.
So choose into your single friends' worlds.
That's really practical. I like that. And yes, it might be hard, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It's not impossibly hard.
And it doesn't have to be a 50-50.
Right. Well, and there shouldn't be a scale.
There's
either.
no scoreboard. Yeah. But, like, I reckon, like, I have more capacity to be in your world.
Right.
But every once in a while, come into mind, please.
I love it. All right. For you, because you are one person.
I'm one person.
What does thriving look like? And where have you learned to thrive?
Yeah.
Or from who have you learned?
Yeah, yeah.
Whom?
First, thriving.
I don't know if it's who or whom, but now I'm in my head. Sorry.
Ask Megan Marcroft.
I know. Do we have Dial a Friend?
Yeah.
Can we do a cold call?
Megan.
A Megan call?
Yeah, yeah. She's who I get all my grammar expertise
I could text
from.
her. Should I text her?
So I think first and foremost, thriving comes from abiding in Jesus. I don't care if you're married, single, young, old, what it is. Like, I'm not going to thrive unless I'm abiding in Jesus. I don't care my situation in life. Second, right?
Hold on. What does abiding in Jesus look like for you?
For me, it means I'm in the Word. It means I go to Jesus. I ask for Jesus. I ask Jesus for my worth. Like, hey, like, what's my next step? Even like on the hard days, like, hey, can you like be with me right now? Like, what does your word say? Last night at the Grove, we studied John 15, and it's the remain in me as I remain in you, and follow Jesus' commands to love one another. And we need Jesus to do that. And that's how we have purpose and how we have joy. Yeah. And so that's my Jesus answer.
Awesome. Okay, abiding in Jesus.
Yes.
What's next?
And here's the thing. So yeah, my situation of singleness is different. I'm only 31.
Okay.
I'm single because I've not been married.
Right.
Singleness might be because you're divorced, you're widowed. Singleness for somebody who's 60 or 70 is going to look different than it is for me.
Right.
Thriving for me involves a lot of people.
You're an extrovert.
I'm an extrovert. I'm a high energy person. And I think one of the hardest things about being single is I don't have somebody to run life with me one-on-one.
Yes.
And that's the thing I miss the most. And so, okay, how do I find that in other places? Not to the same level, but okay, for me, thriving looks like being a part of something and having people to do that with me. And so really, I love doing ministry with my closest friends. Like that, for me, like that is thriving. Yeah. I love sports. And that's why I think even the season of playing football, I get to, right, we're a bunch of 20, 30, 40-year-olds trying to win football games together. And to me, that brings so much life.
No 50-year-olds?
My old team had a 50-year-old, and he was straight up the most fit person there. I was very intimidated by him. But yeah, so I think finding ways that I could be a part of things. The other thing is I need people who will be honest with me and that I could bring my honest, ugly self to them.
Because your spouse is going to know your honest, ugly self, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
And so you have to have somebody that you're willing to kind of bare your soul to.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's part of the like being able to bear each other's burdens is I need somebody who can do life with me and bear burdens. And it's not at the same level. I'm not trying to find the replacement spouse, but having friends choose into that with me. And luckily I have a lot of friends that do that with me. I have friends that they were single, now they're married, or they're still single, or we met as they were married and having kids. And so, yeah, those are things that help me thrive. And honestly, something I need to know my presence matters. It's so easy to get caught up in I'm alone. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many friends I have. I go home by myself. Yeah. And so knowing my presence matters. I don't go home by myself much anymore because I have twins. Yes. I don't have twins. My housemates have twins. But that's something for me. Thriving means I live with people. I probably will never live alone because that's not good for me. Right. And that's not everyone's. I have lots of single friends who live by themselves and they're like, I would hate your situation. I'm like, yeah, because you're not an extrovert. Right. So. Right. Good. And I think, okay, something about this is I've learned, one of the questions was like, how did I learn this? For me, I have a lot of friends who are Christian, same-sex attracted. Okay. Who being single is not their short term. Because they love Jesus, they are choosing out of marriage because the marriage that their flesh desires is not one that honors Jesus. Sure. And so they've had to figure out what does thriving and honoring Jesus as a single person, what does it look like? And it's not a waiting game. It's not a season. It's not. It's life. It's life. Yeah. And I think those are the people that like helped me thrive with like, oh yeah, I need spiritual friendships because this might be the long game. Like, the reality is I would love to get married. I might not ever get married, and that's okay. And so I need to live my life as a thriving now, not a waiting game until I get to thrive.
Sure.
And I think it's those friends who probably, like, people who are same-sex attracted are the one community that we're like, oh, it's a good thing you're single. Versus, like, if you're straight, oh, it's less than that you're single.
Yes.
And so they're like, yeah, let's thrive together. Let's learn how to thrive. And so I think that's where a lot of my experience and learning from has come from.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, sometimes you hear, like, the church is really welcoming. And I've heard that a lot about Arcade. Arcade's so welcoming. But I think there's a difference between welcoming or being a place of welcoming and being a place where there's belonging.
Yeah.
So can you talk about maybe the difference between a welcoming place and a place of belonging?
Yes. And I think, honestly, that is a big distinction that people might not often articulate. Because it's like, oh, we're welcoming. Like, you say hi, you have the casual conversation. You might even notice when somebody's there. Like, oh, I recognize so-and-so enters the third door on Sunday mornings.
They sit on the third pew on the left side.
Especially I count the people who are there on Sunday mornings. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is where you sit. So, like, you can know that and welcome somebody. And that's kind of like the baseline.
Sure.
But when you think about belonging, the person who says hi to me doesn't necessarily add to my belonging.
Right.
When I belong, my presence matters. You know when I'm here. You want me to be
your absence matters.
My absence matters. You want me to be a part of something. It's kind of the difference between if wake up Thanksgiving morning and welcome me, like, hey, you text somebody, happy Thanksgiving, I hope you have a great day, versus, hey, like, 3 weeks prior, come over to our house for Thanksgiving and bring in a side dish.
Right.
Like, you're part of the plan. You contribute. And I think it's when somebody is part of the plan and part of the structure is that they feel like they belong.
Okay.
And so in a church setting, if the structures communicate that we care about single people, our structures are going to show that.
Okay.
And I think that's like, there's going to be events like, okay, we have a growing population of single people. And either that's people are getting married later in life, they're not getting married, divorce rates are higher, and all this, like, okay, so how are we helping? Where are the single people in this situation? And so if we go, hey, turn to your families and pray together.
Yes.
Where did the single people go?
Right.
And so things like that. And I think, honestly, like, Arcade's been a really cool place for me of there's pockets of people who see me and recognize me and help me belong. And that's, like, including me in their plans. Not as an addition or an extra, an afterthought, but like, hey, come. Or, hey, Leah, there's Family Ministries is doing an event. Come as our family.
Yeah.
And those are the things, oh, like, I belong here. So I think those are the differences is you're part of the structure, you're part of the system.
Yeah, that's really good. That's helpful to think about, like, as a church leader. I mean, I lead family ministry, so my focus is primarily married people.
Yeah.
But there are single parents.
Yeah.
And so then thinking about the support structures or events or how we communicate even and being sensitive.
Yeah.
Even though it's a small percentage.
Yeah.
I would never want to communicate that those moms and dads don't matter or that their situation is so faulty that they don't belong.
Yeah.
So really good. Really good to think about. All right. Last question.
Yes.
How can people in the church communicate that singleness can be a full life?
How singleness can be a full life. Okay, so I've been thinking about this, and most of my answers were things not to do. And I think, like, communicating what a full life is looks different for people. The first answer that came to my mind when I was thinking about somebody who's helped me feel like it's a full life is actually going back to Megan. When I first started at Arcade, working at Arcade, something she came to me and was like, hey, like, just so you know, like, you have a unique like benefit to being single leading the college group. And I think that was the first time somebody had named there was an advantage. And I think it struck me because I'm like, oh, here's my disadvantage. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have life experience. People are trying to date and get married, but I don't have that. So I think about all of the things where I'm less like, it's not a benefit. And she came right out and was like, here's where it's a benefit. But I think
Megan's pretty awesome.
Megan's pretty great.
Yeah.
She has said many things that I'm like, I'm going to hold that for the next 20 years.
Yes.
But I think one thing of the not to do, don't call it a waiting season.
Yeah.
It's not a season. It might be a season.
It might be.
But and it's not the waiting game. I'm waiting for dinner tonight because I'm really excited. So I'm surviving right now to get to where I want to be.
Right.
And that's what waiting communicates.
Right.
And so don't call it a waiting season. Don't assume I'm going to get married one day.
Yeah.
And I think even reserve the questions for people you're actually friends with. So if you're not close to somebody, you don't actually have to ask about their dating life because you're communicating that that's who they are.
Yes.
You are who you date. And so I think that's, more the like what not to do. And I think those are pretty universal with most single people versus like helping me have a full life. Like recognize that I still matter. Like whatever that looks like for the relationship.
Right.
My presence matter. I'm not less of a person because I'm single.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I said that was the last question, but I have one more.
This
And
wasn't
we can
planned.
cut it if we want to. So be prepared, fellas. I know sometimes people try to set you up.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
That's a great question that I don't think two people have the same answer to.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of one of, I didn't mention it earlier. I don't mind.
Okay.
Especially my friends.
Yes. Did you guys hear that? Especially her friends.
And I have people.
Just because you know Leah doesn't mean you're her friend.
Yes, I'm going to agree to that. But I think.
She's friendly.
I'm friendly.
There's a difference.
But there's something about that is, I want to be married. And for me, I hate the dating apps. I'm not good at the dating apps. I have no relational capacity for them. I don't text people I know and love back well versus like now I'm trying to talk to somebody who I don't know and don't actually care about. And so I'm like, like set me up, friends. I don't care. What is hard is the people who are like, oh, I'm going to set you up with so-and-so. I'm going to set you up with so-and-so. And they never do. And they never act on it. And
Kind of leaves you wondering.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, oh, can I ask them? And the other person wasn't interested. That's fine. But the constant, like, I'm going to set you up. I'm going to set you up. I'm like, there's a little bit of hope that is crushed every time you do that.
Yeah.
And so be careful.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, it's important. Ask your friend if they want to be set up. And some people do. Some people don't. Some people are like, leave me alone. And some people are like, oh, yeah, like, I don't mind. And I have friends who are like, please don't try to set me up. I don't mind.
Awesome.
It doesn't bother me.
And again,
Yes.
Leah is one single human being, not every single person on the planet.
Yes.
So like you said, ask. If you
Ask.
have a single friend, hey, would you mind?
Yeah.
Would you mind if I met somebody and thought they were great for you?
And I have people who are like, hey, how do you feel about this? They don't even like, hey, can I set you up? They're like, how do you feel about people setting you up? Just like you just asked. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like I appreciate that. And I think that's a good question to ask your friends if you're curious. But actually have somebody in mind if you're going to ask that. And be prepared to ask.
Don't just randomly ask the question.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So those
Thank
are my
you
thoughts.
for answering my off-script
My pleasure.
question.
My pleasure.
Which you should expect because you know me.
I've
That's
met you
what I do.
before.
Okay, let's switch to beholds. Hold on. Let's see. I have a sticky note. Okay, found it. Whew. First Peter, I'm sorry, that's a 2. 2 Peter 1:1-8. Let me read it to you. Simon Peter, a servant and an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who have received a faith equal to ours through the righteousness of our God and Savior Jesus Christ. May grace and peace be multiplied to you through the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord. His divine power has given us everything required for life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. By these he has given us very great and precious promises, so that through them you may share in the divine nature, escaping the corruption that is in the world because of evil desire. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with goodness, goodness with knowledge, knowledge with self-control, self-control with endurance, endurance with godliness, godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being useless or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I couldn't help but think, his divine power has given us everything required for life and godliness.
That's good.
It doesn't say anything about marriage, giving everything you need for life and godliness. So I appreciate you, Leah. I appreciate the way you follow Jesus, the way you lead young people to follow Jesus. And thank you for being vulnerable and honest with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus. Until next time, please like and comment and share. It helps other people know about the podcast. Until next week, see ya.
Bye.